So Saturday night we've got four of Talk's mightiest and cheapest personalities in one room. It's been a monumental past few days. Welcome, my friends, to Clash of the Titans. Tonight, what would you expect other than a US election special? You know what? Buckle up, folks, because Donald J. Trump is back. Jaws have dropped. The mainstream media are stunned. We are now living in Trump's world. Time to roll the Trump titles. So we are here with Clash of the Titans. We're delighted to have back the legend that is Julia Hartley-Brewer. Who's just called me the worst name imaginable.
I did not. I went a bit mateless at you.
You did go mateless at me.
of more on that.
Yeah, James Whale, always great to have you on, and Kevin O'Sullivan, who predicted the amazing news about Donald Trump. I just want to start slightly differently. I was reading this to somebody earlier. I'm going to tell you something. This Richard Tice. I'm going to go straight for David Lammy, our new Foreign Secretary, who 14 months ago tweeted the following. If Donald Trump ever comes back to the UK, I'll be out protesting on the streets. He's a racist, KKK and Nazi sympathiser. Today, David Lammy put, congratulations to Donald Trump on your victory. The UK has no greater friend, and I look forward to working with you and JD Vance in the years ahead. I just love the fact that all those people who thought this man was some sort of, I don't know, I've got to eat their words.
America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate. We have taken back control of the Senate. Wow, that's good. Oh, let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon. But he's a character, he's a special guy, he's a super genius. We have to protect our geniuses. We don't have that many of them. Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness.
For me, I think we can look at it in terms of England as well. Is that not middle America saying the things that matter to us are the economy, our immigration, are the way we treat our ex-service men and women, the very things that on talk we go on about all the goddamn time. Good luck to him, I say.
What they teach to our kids in schools, crucially as well. I think don't underestimate that. People say, oh, women were going to come out and vote on the abortion issue. That's certainly a big issue for me. I've got a big issue with the Republicans on that. But, you know, when it comes to, you know, what happens with your kids, women feel pretty strongly about that. And the madness in our schools here ain't nothing compared to what's going on in America.
Did you see it, honestly, the three of you? Did you see it this way? Because we were talking on air last night and Kev said, I think it'll be Trump, but I'm quite worried.
I said I thought it was going to be Trump.
I always felt it would be Trump.
Did you?
But
I mean, he battered it,
but
didn't he?
towards the end, I was swayed by the incredibly biased media. And on the abortion issue, by the way, you know, I believe strong. I'm European. I believe strongly in a woman's right to decide anything about her own body. But what I think a lot of people on this side of the Atlantic, particularly women, don't understand is a lot of women in America are against abortion as well. We think because we speak the same language, we understand Americans. You've lived there, Jez, and I know.
But it's like the gun law. Piers did that whole thing about the gun law and was rushed out of America. You have to understand, in America, you're right, in terms of women's decisions about abortion and also gun law. It's a different world.
No, but the key thing is, Kamala Harris campaign was basically, they thought that was going, exactly. Luckily, we'll never have to hear from her again.
In the words of Emily Maitlis, she was
this is the thing, is that they thought they could run the campaign on that basis. But actually, this was about, again, it's about the economy, stupid. It always is. But it's also about the border. It's about immigration. It's about things like net zero, which also massively impact as well. It's about law and order, the basic fundamentals of people's ordinary daily lives. And that's what matters. And putting up a candidate and telling everyone, against the evidence of their eyes and ears, that there's this wonderful candidate who's going to make everything better again. Of course, Donald Trump was going to win. Now, I did not want him to win in 2016. I was very upset when he won then. I thought he was unfit for office. I thought certainly in 2020, at the end of his presidency, I wanted him to lose. On balance, if I was an American, I would have voted Hillary Clinton, holding my nose. I would have voted Joe Biden, holding my nose. And I said for weeks on air, on balance, I would have voted for Donald Trump this time round. With all his baggage, he was still better than her.
Yeah, I think what we need to do, I think what we need to do is raise a glass to the world. Because the world is such a safer place.
Do you know what? I went and I woke my 15-year-old son up this morning and I said that to him. I don't care what anybody tells me. The world is a safer place. Now, Donald Trump, the rhetoric sometimes is appalling, and frankly, what you said, I was screaming at him throughout the whole campaign. Talk about the economy, talk about immigration, talk about the fact that this woman was part of lying to the American people for about 18 months, 2 years, about the cognitive ability of the president. He is a phenomenal person.
We need to bring it back to this country.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
we need to say that this government, and I'm sorry, because I looked at the mainstream media the day after the election.
Yeah.
And
What a joy that was.
I could not believe their miserable faces, the main ITV, BBC. I just have no idea how they're so
because
biased.
they believe that this is where I think that the thing about Trump, and you look at perhaps reform in the United Kingdom, you think about somebody like Farage, people assume in politics or the public eye, the celebrities, the news people, the media, that they know best for people. Surely what happened in America was good, honest, hard-working Americans, and I've been to Columbus, Ohio, who don't go to Washington, who are not interested. They would go, do you know what, under Donald Trump, we had at the borders, we had more money. That's the bottom line. Here's something on the train this morning I want to throw at you both. Man says to me this morning...
Carry on,
No,
Des.
I've got to do this.
Fancy a
Man
drink?
says
We
to
go
me on
to
the
the
train,
pub.
because you'll know the answer to this, he could stand again. Because in law, it
No, he
only says you can't stand consecutively.
Can't stand for a second term.
Look, I think there were a series of key moments in this campaign, but the one I'm going to highlight is the one that everybody thought was hilarious, and we're going to talk about Kamala Harris's expression. And it was this moment during the TV debate, and he's talking about Springfield, Ohio, and he went, "They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, and they're eating the pets of the people that live there." And her face was like this. Oh, you pathetic little man. That keys right in to what ordinary Americans think. That was a moment when he won the election. That's when he won the election.
I think the moment he won the election was when Kamala Harris was appointed.
There's so many points.
Because she's so awful. And here's the thing: if you're going to appoint someone just because they're a black woman, that's the only reason she got the VP nomination, and that's the only reason she was actually in the job where
She'd be on the ticket, couldn't she?
Biden's no use, so we're going to have her. We can't find someone else.
But
she was such a bad
She's stupid.
candidate.
She's stupid. She's
So
an empty vessel. Empty vessel.
We have got to bring it back to the UK because everybody took the out of him when he was going on about the eat your cats and dogs and everything else. If we allow people to come into this country, which we are doing at the moment, illegally, and they're not getting into the hotels and having... They've got to survive some way.
You would sort of hope, looking at it, wouldn't you?
We need to defend our shores.
Whether you agree with everything he says or how he says it, if you strip it down, you look at where we're at in this country now. Couldn't we do with somebody that strong? That determined to do what they say they're going to do?
I'm proud of Nigel Farage standing up and getting them.
I think this is very telling for Britain. And the question is whether or not British politicians learn the lesson. And I think they are absolutely not going to learn the lesson. Here's why. Because when we've seen what's happened in Europe, we've seen all these not just presidential elections in Europe, but parliamentary elections, people moving to the right, not the far right, to right-wing parties offering conservative, the small c policies on immigration, the economy, not lunatic net zero policies and woke policies. And you see what's happened in America. And then in Britain, you've got the Labour Party saying, well, we're bucking the trend. We're bucking the trend. We're doing something completely different. People came to us for Labour. That's not what happened. What happened in July was very different. What happened in July was actually voters didn't vote for Labour. They voted against a woke, left-wing, progressive Conservative government. And I just think that they are absolutely living in cloud cuckoo land when they think that people want what they're offering.
You'd want to have been a...
They're not going to want to follow what Trump's doing.
You'd have wanted to have been a fly on the wall in 10 Downing Street this morning when apparently, wasn't he Keir Starmer, Jury Starmer, the first to reach out? I tell you, this is just me in my crazy world. Do you know the first thing I think Donald Trump will do?
What?
The first thing he'll do is pardon himself. But the second thing is he'll end the relationship with Great Britain because he hates David Lammy.
I don't think he will.
But he pardons himself.
I mean, we've got to talk about David Lammy, obviously.
How do we get rid of him?
Surely, by the way, surely Keir Starmer,
must be a
if
way.
he is a grown-up, like he says he is, he really does have to think about his foreign secretary.
Yeah.
And if we want to have a proper relationship with America, I'm afraid Dim Dave has got to go.
Well,
He's got
I said
to
plenty
go.
of things critical
Dim
of Donald
Dave.
Trump,
But
but I
they're not
wasn't
away.
planning to become foreign secretary at some point.
Thick
It's
as a plank.
untenable. As you say, comparing
Yeah.
Donald Trump to Ku Klux Klan fascism, there are plenty of very legitimate criticisms of Donald Trump. What
Absolutely,
he says and
Jules.
what he does,
Yeah.
with his own language and his own words. Those are reasonable criticisms, and I've made all of them in the past, and I will continue to make
But
them.
the whole of the Labour Party are like that.
Yeah.
And the whole of the Labour
Ideology.
government are like that. And I know
They're
we go on
Marxists.
about
They're
it,
Marxists.
but it is we are in a dangerous position.
But we're
because-
actually, isn't it interesting? And Jill's made the point.
We'll be off the air
Europe
before long.
Europe has gone to the right, not far right. Exactly how I see reform.
Do
It's not
you
all
support
far right.
the people trying to...
We're talking
No,
about.
do you support people trying to burn down hotels? No. Do we support all that? No, not at all.
But
We're
I
not talking
absolutely
about that.
support the right to be able to go out and say, you're not looking after my parents, you're not looking after veterans, you're looking after people who've arrived here
100%.
and put in a hotel.
100%.
I think that this will be an interesting moment in Great Britain because, as you said, Europe's gone right despite the EU. Donald Trump's now the leader of the free world, and we are like an island of left-wing ideology in the
Can we
United
just
Kingdom.
also think about something else about Trump?
Yeah.
It's this. First of all, he didn't just win. It wasn't close. It was a landslide.
Battered her.
He thrashed her.
Yeah.
And secondly, while everyone's going, this monster cannot get this job, he cannot be the president. Well,
Yeah.
can we just
Yeah.
remember he was the president once before and not a bad president at all, actually.
Well, the key thing is, and this is
Yeah.
mind-blowing for anyone watching here in the UK, he said he was going to do things.
And he did.
And he did a lot of them. I mean, this is a mind-blowing concept to a lot of people living under our regime. And this is the thing: it doesn't look just
To
like,
make a promise and do it.
At the time we're actually recording this, having the White House, having the Senate, House of Representatives, he's got a majority on the Supreme Court. It's certainly until the midterms in 2 years' time. He has got an awful lot of power. He's not going to have to do everything by executive order. He's going to be able to actually push things through. And there's a lot of things that I think he's going to do, which I'll be really pleased to hear. He's going to take out a lot of the blob. Elon Musk coming in. To take, basically just...
He's going to get a job, isn't he?
He's going to get
Elon?
a huge number of people off that payroll who are stifling the American economy. We need America to do well because when America does well, everyone does well. America does badly.
one for you, Julie.
No, but also the net zero thing. He's going to get rid of that nonsense. Hopefully, he's going to change the madness of what kids are being taught in schools. A lot of the DEI, diversity,
She says I don't stop
trans-
talking.
You go
Now,
first,
but
go
here's
on.
the thing. We are always downstream from what happens in America. So I think that bodes really well for us.
It does. And this one's for Julia and for you too as well. But it's a very bad day for blokes in dresses who want to beat women at sport.
Yep.
There
That
is
was a
that.
backbone of his policy. And what that really represents is an attack on wokery generally. And when you talk about that coming across the Atlantic, I pray for the day.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, he's standing up on this issue. He's actually completely strong on this issue. And I find it extraordinary that Kamala Harris talks about women's rights. Yeah, on abortion, she's stronger. But when it comes to women being safe in their toilets, in their changing rooms, in prisons, in refuges, and being allowed to win a gold medal or a bronze medal in sport, she ain't.
I've never
defending women's
understood
rights.
the very women who talk about women's rights seem to forget every part of that when it comes to transgender, because I won't name names, but I used to be harangued by a certain person about women's rights, but a bloke's got a dress on and has still got a bits. And you're all right with that
We're not a
person
figment of
changing,
men's
right?
imagination.
You're all right
actually-
with that person changing, and that's for women's rights, and they couldn't answer that. I never get that.
I need to make a quick, because I exactly agree with everything you're saying. If you're trans, you're in between. You're transitioning. There are a lot of people who transition, and you wouldn't know that they weren't originally. I have a good friend. She came in here. You will be going, ooh, but she used to be a guy. Now,
No, she used to go, she's still a man.
She's still a man. but
He
you're-
is a man
But
who now lives as if
you
he
would
is a
not
woman.
know that. So
Well, so
you
that
couldn't-
would not be intimidating
No,
to me
exactly
in the
my
bathroom
point.
or my
So
child.
there are
That's
people.
different.
There are people who keep it very
Can we
quiet
not
and
get
transition.
waylaid on?
What about the destruction
Let's
of women?
go back to David
What about
Lammy.
the destruction of women's sport? That's the point.
Yeah.
Men competing against
But here's the
women.
thing, the whole
It's
thing
mad.
about this is Donald Trump and the Republican Party just saying no to this sort of
it's
madness.
absolute.
I
It's
would
nonsense.
I would like to move us on to talk about,
So would I.
what's happening in Britain and what's happening there. I want to talk about what's happening in terms of foreign policy, because you mentioned, not taking people to war. A lot of that is circumstantial. circumstance. Do I believe that, Hamas and Putin waited for Donald Trump not to be in office? No, I simply don't. But there are big issues for me on this one, because I think that the Democrats have been stronger on Ukraine and backing Ukraine against Vladimir Putin. But I certainly think that Donald Trump's much stronger on Israel and backing them against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and indeed Iran. And I want to know where you all stand on that in terms of what's going to happen in terms of foreign policy. You say the world is a safer place. Is it in both of those countries?
I think it is. I think Trump will actually be hard on Putin. I think he's the sort of man who can ring him up and say, listen, mate, you're not having Ukraine. All this death and destruction's got to stop. And if not, then you will end up fighting us. I think he's strong enough to do that, because Ukraine cannot be taken over. I think he will.
I think he may be stronger on it than...
Yeah.
It's really interesting, because you take him as a human being and you take all the bluff and the bluster and all the stuff that he says. Because he's abysmal, because he closes and because he's an egotist, you can imagine him doing exactly what James is saying and saying, you want to do that, I'm not going to get... There's that great story about Macron, when Macron was getting angry with him about NATO. Have you heard this story? And you rang him up, he always tells this story when he does a rally, and he says, I just said, you carry on like doing that, Macron, then I'll be charging you 100% more on any wine you bring into the States. And he went, you can't do that, Donald. He went, yes, I can. I think he'll be strong. Whether he can, I think Jules is right, whether he can sort it all out, but I think we'll see a stronger
indication.
He will sort the United Nations
out.
What's
the point of the United
Nations?
Exactly.
Are a waste of space.
Exactly.
But his indication in the campaign was that he may well stop funding Ukraine. And that, I think, although I think it's really awkward that we're all struggling in a cost of living crisis when our governments are giving billions to Ukraine. I still think for international stability...
We have a cost of living crisis because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Here's the thing about, as I said to Jez last night, the thing about Trump is don't necessarily listen to what he says.
Yes.
Watch what he does.
I'm intrigued.
And I suspect he'll be pretty cautious about Ukraine.
Yeah.
In terms of Gaza, in terms of Israel, he'll have a much better relationship with Netanyahu, and that can only be good.
And very quickly, because I'm told to go to break, I think you might all disagree with me. I think, having done it before, having done this campaign, I actually think he'll be interested in creating a legacy. I think you'll see a lot more achieved in the next 4 years.
You're right.
And I think the rhetoric will go out the window. Right, stay tuned for more Clash of the Titans. We're unpacking Trump's victory and what it spells for immigration. That's next. We're back in 3. We're having a wee. Bye-bye. Welcome back to Clash of the Titans, the legend that is James Well. What you got for us about Donald J. Trump?
Well, immigration. He's doing, or hopefully will do a great job on the southern border. Because we think we've got problems. They have got a lot more. And the Latino vote was pretty high in favour of Trump. And they're people who are settled in America, are there legally, and they don't want to see people coming illegally. Now, I have no problem with people coming to this country legally. Probably we've got too many and we need to cut that down. But people coming, they're not migrants. These are criminals. And I get sick and tired. You control me all you like. I couldn't care less. I have no time for these people who've got money, spend it on coming here illegally, and we then give them a welcome.
And drop their paperwork 12 miles out.
So I'm hoping that if America shows toughness, we do. Never mind about having all these people on the beach with blankets and water and everything else. Let's have some of our armed forces in the Channel. The Navy will do a great job. And I'm sorry.
Except they keep refusing.
Well, yeah, but not if they're told.
Woke reasons.
I think
they've been ordered, they won't do it.
I think if Donald Trump's able to do it, and bearing in mind when we talk about, 27,000 or 30,000 or whatever coming across on Channel boats across the, in their little dinghies, we're looking at
Southern
10
border.
million plus
Possibly
people
more.
coming across the boats.
Yeah.
That we know about. And that's the key thing, is that if he can do something about it, and bearing in mind, he did do something about it when he was in power beforehand. And then, of course, Kamala Harris and Biden opened the border, and then they've only started to try and cut that down.
Germany doing it.
Yeah, but if he can do it and he takes
Italy
that on,
are doing
that will send a message to Europe and to us. If he can do it, we know you can. And if you don't do it, we'll put in someone who will.
Do you not think it's very interesting as well?
In his last presidency, about 2.5 million migrants came across the southern border. During Biden's presidency, as you said, officially 10 million came across. They think probably 20 million.
Wow.
It is out of control.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who these people are. And that is a major reason why Trump won the election. And if Starmer doesn't get his act together, he'll lose the
and
next
you don't
election.
have to be
Is it
bigot
not-
to have a concern.
Is it not
about
very
that?
interesting as well what James said about the Latino vote? The migrants who genuinely have come to America, gone to America, are legal and are giving something back. And I would exactly agree with you, Kev. I'm sure Julie agrees. I don't have a problem with that. I'm so with you, James.
Absolutely.
If you're going to drop your paperwork 12 miles out, if you've got the RNLI and the Navy who will do nothing, if you know that you land here and we're so goddamn soft you've got a hotel, whereas we're screwing people in this country who don't get anything, that Starmer has to wake up. But I think this is why it's so important about Donald Trump. He has taken the American people and said, I don't care whether it sounds bad. I'm not having my country infected with people who are taking advantage. I want a leader like that in the United Kingdom.
Has
It'd be
this
great.
world got controlled by a lefty media and lefty politicians? Because even the Tories are
were.
wet.
Yeah.
Look
Julia
at the
said earlier
people
she's right.
controlling the mainstream media. We're very lucky because social media cannot be controlled in the way mainstream media
Well,
can.
thanks to Elon Musk, it was absolutely being controlled over recent
it
years.
was,
And certainly Facebook and everything, massively controlled in recent years. Thank God for Elon Musk. Now, he ain't perfect. He's not, he's got his own faults, but at least we've got somewhere where people can speak. And I tell you what's fascinating, actually, just looking at the outcome of this election in the United States, is how differently people are reading this election result and how surprised they are by it, depending on whether they've watched mainstream media, whether they've been on social media. If you've been on social media, you knew it was much closer than mainstream media.
That's frightening, though, isn't it?
But Kamala's wonderful, so
But
it's all
isn't
fine.
that frightening for the people in this country and
dishonest.
the world?
It's
It is,
dishonest.
of course, dishonest. And this mainstream media argument and social media is such a great point.
Can you
if you
see-
read the newspapers, the fake news, as he used to call it over the last few weeks, you said it. He was in the lead, then she was in the lead, then it was tight. People who were reading not that were saying, I mean, you guys said it to me yesterday, it could be a landslide.
Can you see a Trump supporter being invited on This Morning to have a little chat?
Yeah.
Can you see that
But exactly
happening?
the same as Brexit during
Exactly.
2016, when
Exactly.
you deride people. And this is the whole thing. The Democrat policy, the Democrat campaign was basically, well, there was no policy really. Oh, everything's been fine, but it'll be different. Well, why do you want it to be different if everything's been fine under Biden?
Yeah.
But also, it was, I'm not a fascist. I'm not Donald Trump. I'm not someone like Hitler. I'm not Donald Trump.
What are you then?
Yeah, but that's not enough. People want things, but that's the thing. People no longer believe these words. They no longer believe politicians. They no longer trust politicians, and so they're going to go to the people who say things that they recognise. When someone says there are too many people crossing the border, and there are too many people crossing the border, when they say we're going to have to get back law and order against someone who, by the way, was saying let's help people who are basically trashing their local towns and cities on behalf of Black Lives Matter, and saying let's try and help them post bail. She literally did do that. Someone who doesn't seem to think that that a woman is actually a real thing, just a figment of a man's imagination. when people are living with the reality, and they've got someone like Donald Trump, he can talk a load of nonsense about lots of things. He can do a lot of bad things, and he has. But when he is saying stuff that is far more true than what the so-called grown-ups are saying, they vote for him.
So the question, though, is, and I still don't understand, how do we get into a position where I was going to say
Because
but that
idiots.
would be too rude.
Because we're idiots, we're malleable.
How did this get into a position? Is that too rude? How did this awful person get into the position of foreign secretary?
Can I just say one thing? I actually think, we said at the beginning of the show, if you look at what's happened to Donald Trump in America and you take into consideration that these are normal, everyday Americans, not with an agenda but a belief that their vote counts, I fervently believe, we can sit here and talk about how the left wing and the ideology and all the problems, the wokery, I think this country is not only crying out, whether it's Farage or somebody else, I don't know. I think this country is not only crying out for Donald Trump, but one thing I would say when you talk about the stuff that comes over, I think this will have a major impact
the
on this
revolution,
and
I
other
think, is
countries. I think they will stop saying the mainstream media, I mean, the riots.
No, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you. They didn't stop
finished.
after Brexit. They didn't stop after Boris.
But I think people...
They're not going to stop.
All right, well, I think the people will realise after Donald Trump, actually, I matter. My vote matters. I'm not accepting immigration. I want to do... And I think they'll look at him and think maybe we can do it here.
Do you know what people are doing now? They're looking at betting odds on politicians instead of polls.
Well, because they're more accurate,
Exactly.
that's right.
But maybe the advertisers, who are a bit woke, some of them, maybe they need to look at where the audiences are. And if you look at the last election, then this bunch of fools in number 10 do not have any mandate to govern this country.
They didn't need a mandate.
They're a minority.
They do have a mandate.
Well,
no,
they have
I
a
know. You see, I don't want to
mandate,
go down that Trump line. They do have a mandate.
They didn't win it, though. The
others did, but they still have the majority in Parliament.
They did win it.
You must never ever undermine democracy and the vote. The peaceful transition of
democracy
power.
isn't working
They have
at
a
the
mandate.
moment.
If the Tories had been any
working
better,
in
they'd
America.
still be in power.
Let's talk about the media, though. I mean,
let's
the
do
media
that.
has been disgraceful. As I said earlier, I've always felt Trump would win because I kind of know America. I've lived there like yourself, but I got swayed by the media. I kept reading the papers, watching the TV,
He does a lot.
and you would have thought that Trump was out of it. Kamala was a genius. We've got a few examples to show you. Good Morning Britain here. Their star guest, who's got a bit of an agenda, was Stormy Daniels, the porn star who slept with Trump. I mean, amazing. Take a look at this.
Who knows what goes on in the mind of a lunatic, but he said it himself. And I don't understand, I'm actually coming on your show this morning and for the first time a little bit shocked and ashamed of what's happened in my country. But I'm going to say, and I think that it's you cannot tell me that it's not because of racism that she did not win.
Oh.
You lost your
Well, there you are. I mean, that a very important contribution.
It must be racism.
Ed
Not that she's useless.
Balls, Labour politician, interviewing Trump hater Stormy Daniels, and let's not forget Emily Maitlis. Hilariously,
brilliant.
She's on her newsagents podcast, and on Channel 4 on the night of the election, she had a complete meltdown, started swearing, and got kicked off the show. Let's have a look at Emily in action.
I don't want a woman president yet. 45 years after Margaret Thatcher gets elected.
It shouldn't be easier to beat a black woman.
What's that about? It's a bit racist, isn't it?
The obsession with Kamala Harris being a black woman. So, speaking as a woman, the idea that a woman should get any appointment simply because of her genitals, I find it utterly bizarre. Was she any good? No.
Yes, she was really.
But when you look at that, right, the idea. Let's go back to Stormy Daniels, and I'm going to say you're going to probably hit me, right? It takes two people to have a shag, doesn't it? It takes two people, right? She's still trolling this story, whether he had sex with her or not, right? It's done. You're sat for 15 minutes on one of our state broadcasters talking about this dreadful man. He's won. And Maitlis, you can see
who
it
has
pouring.
not had sex with Donald Trump. I feel the need to stress that.
Yes, you can see all those woke liberals, it dripping out. That's why I woke up this morning and was so happy, because all those bed-wetting, horrendous liberals are like, how can this happen? It has. Deal with it, you bunch of soft
Also on Channel 4, Boris Johnson was on it, and he kept plugging his book. So our Emily told him off. Have a look.
You essentially started importing some of that sort of Trump-like behaviour into Britain when you were Prime Minister. His disregard for institutions, his disregard for the rule of law, his denialism, which I guess was mirrored in your response to the Privileges Committee, your response to the Parliamentary Standards Committee, your proroguing of Parliament. This is all Trump-like behaviour that you imported to Britain.
So there I obviously disagree profoundly, and as I detail extensively in Unleashed, the book.
I don't know why it's funny. I don't know why it's funny. You've just heard what he's like as a character, and I'm asking you.
Because I don't accept your analogy at all. I think it's very dangerous and sloppy to make analogies between the US and the UK.
No, in that kind of way.
What is her problem then, Emily?
She was in a really bad mood because Trump was winning.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about,
she's
right?
got serious Trump derangement
She's
syndrome.
a bit dim, to be honest.
By the way, if you want to cap off...
not dim, but what do you want to use the term?
Not dim.
She's completely completely obsessed in the wrong way.
She's just North London metropolitan elite, and she lives in a world where everybody agrees with her. And,
like him.
And
exactly, dim.
And she just doesn't. Again, same with Brexit, same with the Conservatives. Every single view, and she has all the correct viewpoints, which is why she survived at the BBC for so long, and why she's doing the job she's doing. And it is utterly bizarre. They have no concept that other people can disagree with them, and mind-blowing, not actually be bad people.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think that, and Emily Maitlis is a really good example of what you've just said, a fantastic example. Do you think that as a behaviour in the media, the Emily Maitlis, do you think that will change because of Donald Trump?
No, because there'll always be lefties. No. By the way, this is Tom Bradby, the ITV host, and he didn't mess about. He just called Donald a fascist. Take it away, Tom.
Look, there'll be lots of people watching this back home, you know, who are Trump supporters, who like Trump and all the rest of it. There will be a lot of people watching back home who saw what General Kelly said, who saw what General Milley said, and just will not be able to conceive that the most powerful democratic country in the world has elected somebody who people closest to him called a fascist. Now,
some,
yeah.
to be fair.
Yeah.
Kevin, you're being very like the mainstream.
He didn't call him a fascist.
Didn't call him a fascist. He was quoting something.
Well, okay, but he's bringing up the topic.
But again, the key thing is that language is stupid.
Exactly.
But by the way, also, if everyone's a fascist, no one's a fascist.
They all look like they've had their sweets taken, don't
he's
they?
He's enshrining the narrative that Donald Trump is a fascist. Because that's what they believe.
What has happened is that the media and the political classes have lost touch with the ordinary people.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. And how did we allow that to happen? Probably because we were a bit lazy. But now with social media, everybody is in the media.
But do you look at America, and I know what you're saying, that there will still be those leftists, do you look at America, all of us as a four, and go, if Donald Trump can do that, if he can take everything thrown at him by the news channels, if he can say, do you know what, this is what I believe, and I might upset people, be it what happens in Springfield, or what about women's rights or ideology in schools, have we got an opportunity somewhere down the line in this country for somebody, whether it's Farage or not, to actually stand, take the flak, and do the same in the United Kingdom?
Yeah,
what do you think?
I absolutely think that is possible. But again, by the way, I don't, James, I don't think that British people are to blame or the American people to blame for being ignored. And people have voted again and again for the same things again and again, and then they've been ignored by the parties they've elected. I think people have seen what's happened in America, like they've seen what's happened in Europe, and people in Britain are going to say, you know what? I ain't putting up with this anymore.
I think it might be at a turning point.
I don't disagree, Julia. I totally agree with that. But I think there's going to have to be a time when people realise that if democracy is going to work, you need to vote.
Oh, 100%.
Because the turnout's not been great.
But I think Kemi Badenoch's got a hell of a mountain to climb. Yeah. But I think her problem is, Nigel Farage is articulating this, that we might be at a turning point. Just like America, we may be at the point of saying no to the Conservative project and beginning to embrace Reform UK. In other words, we will shift rightwards the way Europe is, the way America has. And,
do you know what? Not shifting rightwards. They've just shifted leftwards.
Yes.
Most people in Britain, I can America, they're in exactly the same place they've been for the last 10, 20, 30 years.
So the Tories
it's all of the parties that have shifted so far to
I think
the
the biggest thing in I think the biggest thing in politics, I think we all agree, is if you underestimate the electorate. I always thought that in 2019 the Labour Party assumed that north of England, north of Watford Gap, the working man and women would vote for them. That didn't happen. You're quite right, the Tories lost any ability for people to listen to them. But in this country, I think people will wake up and they will go, hold on a second, so my vote does count, as you quite rightly said, and it can happen there. And it's not racist to say that illegal migrants shouldn't come into our country. And it's not wrong to say we should look after people who have paid their stamp. If it can happen there, why the hell can't it happen over here? And I think that's what will come out.
People in this country really appreciate what's happened in America.
Yeah.
I was walking down the station today and my newsagent mate, he came out of the shop and he shouted at me, he did it! He did it! I mean, people are really energised by this. And I think this country will go in the same direction, and I damn well hope it does. What Kemi Badenoch's got to remember, or try to recapture, is what the Tories are supposed to be. Their problem is they stopped being conservative.
I don't think they know us since 1997.
Well, I think she's got a good idea, but she's got to take everyone else with her.
Be very interesting. Julia Hartley-Brewer, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have seen you in your orange. Very kind. James Whale, the legend that is James Whale, and that North London champagne socialist liberal. Kevin.
I keep seeing him on Hampstead Heath.
Cheers.
Do you? When you see him on Hampstead Heath, though, is that in any particular...
No,
In daylight hours.
Oh, daylight hours,
With
not in the
or on
bushes.
off.
Prowl there at night.
Oh, God, that's it from Clash the Titans. Thanks for watching. You can get more of us on Talk throughout the week. Radio online, your smart speaker. You can subscribe more for Talk on YouTube. Have a great week. We'll see you next Saturday. Ta-ra.